feed your mind with superhuman power, life would be a breeze sometimes. The good stuff's in between the lines, my thoughts and my feelings still tell 1,000 lies. But now you're taking away my sorrow, you're taking away my fear. We're not promised tomorrow, so let me hold you close, my dear. Nothing's gonna bring me down, no thinking about the past while we're building for tomorrow. Nothing's gonna bring me down.
Hello and welcome back to the Good Stuff In Between podcast with me, Shaun Milne. In episode 11, I'm chatting with Xan Tyler about her remarkable new album, Holding Up Half the Sky. She's no stranger to the music industry, having been in bands with cult followings, duos. She was signed by Alan McGee and the famous Creation Records for a time and has been on tour around the world. But this is the first time she's brought out her own solo album, and it's coming this Friday. She talks to me about some of the inspiration, the challenges, and some of the highs and lows along the way. Really enjoyed the chat. I hope you do too. Xan, thanks so much for joining us for episode 11 of The Good Stuff In Between. Congratulations on the new album, debut solo albums.
It is, yeah. It is my debut solo.
How exciting is that for you?
It's extremely exciting. It's sort of long time in the making, sort of literally and in every other way. But like I've done lots of collaborations over the years, and I've been making music for a really long time. But this is the first time I've done an actual album under my own name. So yeah, it's mega exciting.
So I'm lucky enough to have been exposed to some of your music previously. I know the depth and the layers and the quality of it. But how did you get into the scene in the first place?
It was a bit of an accident, really, if I'm honest. I was a teenager, had left home, working in bars, kind of a little bit not sure what I was doing with my life, really. And I had always loved singing, but I never did it in front of anyone. And I just sort of fell in with this group of people that were in a band, and somehow found myself one day on the stage at the Rock Garden in Covent Garden with 17 other musicians, I think. And if you know the Rock Garden in Covent Garden, it's like the smallest stage ever. But how the hell we all fit on it. And it was my first ever gig, and I just got the bug. It was like, wow, I thought I might die from nerves, but then once I kind of got through to the other side, I realized that was what I wanted to do. And I've just been in bands and been recording and knocking about. I'd like to say I had this great plan, but it's always been a little bit like that. I've just kind of seen where the wind's blown me a wee bit with it. And that seems, touch wood, so far to have sort of worked okay.
So that's a hell of a way to kick off. And as you say, if you got the bug from there, I would imagine you did it for a bit of fun and then maybe got a bit more serious. At what point did you think, I can actually do something with this? Or was it somebody came to you and said, hey, would really love to work with you?
Well, that band that I mentioned, the first band I was in, they were a pretty serious band in that they had a really big following, brilliant thing to be involved with. It was very theatrical, quite risque, full of just wild characters. And we had such a great following that would, they would come down, they knew all the words, they had all the T-shirts, they did all the moves, and A&R people would come along and they would be like, wow, we packed out some really big venues like the Forum and Country Club and what was it called? Town and Country, that's it. All those places and the Clapham Grand and really big venues, the Marquee. We did a residency at the Marquee. And A&Rs would calm down. They'd be like, this is incredible. Like the buzz in here is electric. But they just could not work out how to make that be a thing that you could sell on a record because it didn't translate all that energy. They were good songs and it had a vibe, but you couldn't capture that thing in the room. And also it was quite rude. And so back then they were a little bit more cautious about signing these things. So I, from the very beginning, I was involved with this thing that had aspirations and stuff to get signed and to do these big shows, and it's probably where I've sort of continued to sort of think big with things like my launch was that I've just done. It's like it's how can we make this really a big show, and bring lots of people together and make it a big collaboration of all this creativity. So I was really lucky that that was my first band, to be honest. And I'm still friends with them now. But so I did that. And when they'd been going for a while before I joined. And so eventually they kind of got a bit jaded by the almost getting signed and not getting signed. And, that gets a bit hard after a while. And so I think the lead singer and the main other guy decided, to knock it on the head for whatever reason. We did another little version of it, which was a scaled down thing. And then one day, sat in my kitchen, me and the lead singer and the trumpet player decided to start, it was the lead singer's idea, to start a tribute band. And it was at the time where tribute bands weren't that big. And we were going to do all the music from Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. And I remember just thinking, this is really, really good idea. Like, this is genius. And at the time I was working at this little music agency in South London, quite a small agency, but we booked gigs for college balls and all that kind of thing. And I was like, ping, that is a brilliant idea. So I was like, right, I'm being Uma Thurman. I'm going to get myself a black wig. And within weeks, we had the flyers printed, and we just hit it at the right moment. So within weeks, we had this thing up and running, and we'd worked out all the songs and we had the costumes, we did the dance moves, and we were booked in to do so many freshers balls, so many summer balls. It was like we just did it at the right time. That band is still going today. I don't know if there's anyone left in it that maybe one person that I knew from the original lineup. And that's employed loads of people all those years since. So that would have been about 90, I don't know, 5 or something.
Just for people who might not know, I mean,
yeah.
You use words like risky and quite rude. That can only be Death Bang Party.
Yes.
And they had a real cult following through not just London, but beyond. Because, as you say, it was a show. It wasn't just a band.
That's right.
All sorts going on there. Has that been foremost in your mind when you mentioned your launch show there, how it's quite big? Is it that idea of connecting an energy to an audience to sort of draw that interest out? Is it something that's just a bit of a stunt? How would you describe it?
I think it was, great songs, and they're influenced by some great stuff, so like Toots and the Maytals type horns and things like that. So really groovy stuff. But they were really good at, utilizing all the people's creativity within the band, and it's sort of like wider network as well. Like, we had people making costumes in their back rooms, and just people wanted to be a part of it. So it was a community. It really felt like this big community, and the followers were called the Scumbag Posse, and they were like, they all had their t-shirts with this the Scumbag Posse logo on, and they you'd see them around South London all over the place and stuff, in the street. And I still from time to time get messages from Scumbag Posse members. But yeah, they all felt part of it. So they described it, and have heard people since describe it as an experience rather than just going to a gig. It's a thing that they were very much involved with. They were a part of. And so that, I think, was the thing that I kept. And that next band that I mentioned, the Tarantinos, that was very much the same thing. It was like, how can we use that same energy? So we're using Tarantino's films, and we're using the quotes from his films and his songs from the soundtracks, but we're involving the audience again. So it was like really, involved, and everybody felt like they'd had an experience after the gig. And that's what I think really appealed. And I guess that has stayed with me. Like, I don't do theatre-y type stuff anymore at all, but that feeling of wanting to collaborate with lots of people, and like this album is a debut solo album, but it also feels a bit weird to say solo because it's involved so many people.
Well, let's get into that a little bit then, because the album is called Holding Up Half the Sky.
Yeah.
There's a number of ways that title could have came around. I'm wondering if you can tell me which one is right.
the album is inspired by stories of female empowerment. And so I just went, I don't know how I came across that quote. It's a Mao, Chairman Mao, and it was used in lots of sort of propaganda to try and recruit women, I guess, into the cause. And so it's like, you women can do anything. And so it's, obviously I'm not a fan or anything, but it's been sort of reappropriated and used for lots of other things since. And I just thought it just really spoke to me as a title. And it was just, when you're sort of looking for things and then you come across the one and it's like, yep, that is it.
You talk about female empowerment. You just had your launch in Glasgow. Sounded like quite a spectacular event with a spectacular venue and 13 female artists, each having a work that speaks to the tracks.
Yeah. So how that started was a friend of mine, Joe Richards, who is a portrait painter, had offered to paint a portrait of me for the cover. We talked about working together for years, and she said, let's do it. So that was an amazing process working with her, like just seeing how, I don't know if you've seen it, it is phenomenal. She is so talented. And I saw it actually at the launch for the first time in the flesh because she's in London. I hadn't seen it properly. And you think,
How did you feel when you saw it?
really quite emotional, yeah. And it was, and I'm just blown away by the skill, because obviously the photograph is fantastic and it looks amazing on the album cover. But when you see it in the flesh, like a photo flattens things, so you don't get that 3D. And it's like 3D. I was moving around and sort of going, this is insane. So talented. So anyway, she did the portrait. I loved that process. And then I started thinking it would be really nice to see if I could get one or two of the songs interpreted by somebody, because I do know quite a few artists. And, I just thought I'll let them sort of see, I'll give them a song and see what, let them have free reign to just be inspired by it. Like, they don't have to follow the narrative of the song. They don't even have to reference the song. If something else speaks to them, let's see where that goes. It just felt really exciting to do that. And of course, once I did one, I was like, okay, let's just do every song on the album. So there's 12 songs on the album, plus Joe's portrait. So there was 13. And some of the women I hadn't met until this project, but I was aware of them just through the scene and, social media and stuff. And I just approached them, and luckily they all said yes. And the standard of work was phenomenal, and it was just really empowering, like, and emboldening, working with all these women and coming together in this way. And yeah, and they all seemed really inspired by it too. So it was a lovely collaboration.
But tell us about the event itself. How did that sort of manifest?
Because the focus was about doing the art, exhibiting the art, and having a gig to place some of the songs from the album, it was quite hard to find the right space for that. And I went looking at lots and lots of galleries. They were either, initially I wanted the art to be up for a week and the gig to be at the end of it. And then I remembered that I'm not a millionaire. And in fact, I don't have a budget really for this tour. So I had to sort of find somewhere that would sort of work, and it would have to only be for the one night. And none of the gallery spaces were quite right, and none of the traditional music venues were quite right. Lots of dark spaces with not good light and all of that sort of thing. And then one of the artists suggested, Ashley Cook, she suggested Panopticon, which she does a lot of stuff at. And it's the world's oldest surviving music hall. It's in Glasgow. It's a phenomenal space. It's sort of lovingly preserved. So it's got all the original plasterwork, and it's hard to even describe, actually. And I walked in and I just knew immediately that was had to be the place, and all the other stuff I would just work around, the things that maybe weren't perfect about it. So there's a noise limit because of the original plasterwork. You can't go above 95 decibels. So it's like, okay, is that going to work? Okay, I'll just not have drums. That's fine. We'll just do it without drums. And it was February, I think, when I went to view it, and it was about -5 in there. It was freezing. And I was like, okay, how's that going to work? And she said, it does heat up. Judith, the woman that runs it, she said, it does heat up. And I was like, okay, but even if it's warm outside, it surely can't heat up by much. So that kept me awake quite a few nights worrying about that in the lead up. But it had warmed up despite the sort of endless cold weather that we had. It did warm up enough and everyone was fine. So yeah, it was a really, really magical night. And I hadn't, it exceeded my expectations actually. And everyone's been sort of buzzing about it since.
And the album itself, it's had rave reviews already, been on BBC Radio, for example. There's been plenty written about it so far, and I'm sure much more to come. You mentioned collaborations. Boo Hewerdine was involved, who also has worked with, like, say, Eddie Reader in the past. You had Jamie Savage from Chem 19, the famous studio out in Blantyre, I think, these days.
Yeah, yeah.
And a whole host of people there with John McCusker, the fiddle. Harvey, the cellist. Who else has been involved?
Emma Pollock did a guest vocal on one of the tracks for us, which was amazing. So Louis Abbott, who is Admiral Fallow, lead singer from Admiral Fallow, is also an insanely talented session musician, and he played drums on the album like beautifully. Adam Scott plays bass, who I've worked with for quite a few years, and John Rooney plays lead guitar, who I've also worked with for years, and a guy called Gustav Lundrum, and he's a friend of Boo's, and where they've worked together on lots of stuff. And he played all the sort of woodwind and horns and some extra stuff, and beautifully, absolutely stunning arrangements that he did. And so, yeah, quite a dream team. It all sort of started with Boo, and he was really a massive part of this project. He wasn't just a producer, he really helped me to get over my own barriers and to helped me sort of just really have the confidence and just tackle some of the songwriting. Like, some of the songs had been kicking around as ideas for a long time, and then it wasn't until really sort of sitting down with him. Some of them we wrote together, some of them, like I said, had been kicking around. But yeah, it was really his encouragement and his sort of he was really invested in the whole thing. He really believed in the concept and the project. And so yeah, I was very lucky. Like I say, it's a solo album, but there's a lot of people involved.
So you have some tracks out already, and people will discover it themselves when they hear an album. But your career has been described as a bit of everything: reggae, indie, all dance, electronic, pop, hip hop. I saw mentioned as well in there. How has that journey developed into this project? When you're working with so many really talented people, it's your own vision that's in there as well. Where do you think you've drawn most of your inspiration from? And you probably couldn't pigeonhole this, but how would you describe it?
It is really difficult to describe it because I have deliberately now decided to keep it as broad as I like. And that, like I was described as genre agnostic and that was the last project. That was the reggae album with Mad Professor. This album does have a lot of different styles in it. I like to think that it sort of all ties together, and I think that's to do with obviously my voice, but the style of writing. Boo described it, what did he describe it as? Baroque pop with a nod to Wicker Man folk. And I thought that was the best description I'd sort of heard of the album, really, because it definitely has that poppy element and indie element in places, a bit of a sort of rocky element in places, but it's definitely got that Wicker Man folk thing going on, because I really wanted to have that kind of it's not folk, but that folky element. So yeah, it is hard. I don't really know how to describe it. And when you're filling out these various forms that you have to fill out, and it gives you this drop down thing where it says genre, and you're like, oh, don't ask me that. I just don't know what to put. Like, I know that there's a bit of all of those in there, but I don't want to call it one of those because that's really misleading.
In some ways, it felt to me like a playlist, because it does take you from one sense to another, and you never quite know what you're getting next. One minute I'm thinking I'm sitting in France, next minute I'm in the Highlands. You know,
Yeah.
there's just something quite magical
Well, that's
about that.
interesting. I like that idea actually. That you.
Was it fun to do?
Oh, it was immense fun. It was really, really fun. Like to do it every day of the week. That I mean, particularly the recording bit. I love being in the studio. It's just real fun. But no, the whole process has been fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun at the start when just Boo and I would get together and just talk through ideas and sometimes write together, and that felt like a dream come true. He's such an amazing guy and he's done so much and so much that I admire. And then, yep, studio time was amazing. And then I've learned a lot too. You learn so much as you
What kind of things?
in this day and age, things are really different. You have to be everything. You have to be the writer, the performer, you have to work out where you're going to get your budget from. You're going to have to work out, you know, how to get videos, and usually you're doing it on no budget at all, and you have to do your PR. I mean, I was lucky to have money from Creative Scotland, so that's how this whole thing has happened. I mean, I would not have been able to make this album without their support. But even learning how to write the application, I mean, they're not easy, those things. They're hefty documents, and you've got to really get every little detail right. Otherwise, you get a knockback. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do if that happened. And Help Musicians have also given me some funding too. So I've learned a lot through that process. I've probably learned how I would do it a bit quicker if I do it again. I've learned that I'm sometimes my own worst barrier to things because I am an overthinker. And that's useful in lots of ways when you want to get detail right, but it also can be a hindrance when you should just do it, just take that leap of faith. I've learned lots of practical little things, little ways of getting stuff out there that, utilizing some of the stuff that we've got. So, like Scotland, there's like wide days and there's these conferences that are really useful to go to, and it costs money to get in. And that's obviously not everyone's got extra cash for these things. But if you can, you do learn a lot, and you network, you meet people, but you also you're exposed to people from the industry who have got some useful stuff to say, and they sit in these panels and they just give you these little nuggets, stuff about syncing, which is where you sync your music to film and TV, and how to go about trying to do that. I mean, it's hugely difficult to get your music synced to and everybody wants their music in film and TV, but you've got to try, haven't you? So that's what I mean about being everything. And sometimes it's hard because you realize you've spent a whole week, doing admin stuff like, or longer than that, and you've not picked up a guitar or you've not done anything creative. And that is getting the balance. That's hard. That can be really hard.
Do you think you've learned anything about yourself in this process?
Tons. Tons. I mean, like right from the subject matter of the album. So, I decided I was going, it started off as a sort of letter to my younger self. And then it evolved into utilizing women's stories to tell my own stories, but bringing in these stories of others. That in itself felt like a bit massive therapy session, and it was at a time where I'm at a time in my life where, lots of women, they get to this sort of middle-agey bit and it's like, right, what's next, and lots of women kind of disappear. They sort of shrink a wee bit because society's, kind of ignores us a wee bit. And it's like, you've got to make that, well, I decided I was going to just turn it up a bit rather than turn it down. And it was that in itself was part of this album, the process, if you like. So I've learned so much. I've learned lots of practical stuff. I learned lots of stuff about songwriting through Boo. Like there was just little things that he gave me that will stay with me. Just little things he said that are still in there, um, and just how to pull these things together. And the biggest thing I would say is if you don't ask, you don't get. And I was terrible for just thinking, oh, I can't ask that. That's, I couldn't ask Emma Pollock to sing a vocal on my song. Who the hell does she, who the hell do I think I am, But if you ask, then what's the worst? They might say no, but that's the worst that can happen. So yeah, I've learned a lot.
Given where you are today, you've got your album, the physical albums there. It's out in the wild. As I say, you've been getting great feedback on it so far. What's next? You'll have some live dates, I'd imagine, coming up. Where do you see this going now?
So immediate future is, some dates. I've got some gigs coming up, and that's all on my social media if anyone wants to have a look. It's about promoting this and getting it to as many ears as possible. That's hard in itself, because when you're not that well known, getting reviews and stuff is tricky. But I've been lucky to have some radio play, like you say. So yeah, just keep trucking, really. I mean, I've got other creative projects after this. I'm in the middle of another funding application to start a project with a collaboration with a chap based in Amsterdam who goes under the name Dusty Stray. His name's Jonathan, and we'll be doing an album together next. And then after that, I want to do another Xan Tyler solo. So that'll be another funding application, I guess. Unless, unless this album sells billions of copies, who knows? But yeah, you just got to keep going, and you get little sort of bumps in the road, and you get little things that don't quite go to plan, and you get little disappointments here and there. And I used to let those things really crush me, and whereas now I'm like, no, next, keep going.
When you're standing at the venue in Glasgow, surrounded by the art, all these people, you're seeing the receptions for your songs, you're with fellow musicians. How did that moment feel given this particular journey you've been on?
It did feel really special. It always goes very fast, obviously, when you're up there, and you feel it's hard to take a moment in that moment to really sort of appreciate the enormity of it, and that but I do remember thinking, oh my God, I did it. Like during the gig, because about 2 hours before, when there was just chaos in that auditorium, like I had amazing people helping me, but we didn't just put art on the walls. We made frames for the stands for the artwork so that it was completely uniform. Every piece of art had its own stand, and each stand had an MP3 player and headphones so you could listen to the song. There was a piece of writing about the artist and the work. So it was involved. And I don't know how I would have done it without, well, I wouldn't have done it without all these amazing people helping. But in the 2 hours before, I was sound checking, looking out, thinking, oh my God, I've bitten off more than I can chew. This isn't going to come off. They've got 2 hours till the doors open. And then somehow it just happened. So yeah, I stood there and just thought, this is amazing. And then had the woodwind section join us, which isn't something that we're able to do very often because, we generally just go out as a trio, John, Adam and I. So we had the woodwind, and we had Boo join us, which was obviously not something that we get to play with him live. That would be amazing to have him involved all the time. And then there's one song on the record with a cello, and we've never done that live. So we also had a cellist come in and do that. So, and it all just came together. It was magic. All the little things I'd been laying awake at night worrying about, like, are people going to be too cold? Is the artwork going to stand out enough? All that stuff. None of it mattered. Everyone was having a great time. And then when I came off stage, I got, lots of really happy people coming up and congratulating me. So it just felt like I felt really, really vindicated in my crazy idea of doing this big thing. It's like, no, we did it.
And when you woke up the next morning, what's the first thing that came into your head?
It was few, yeah. It was few, and it was. I mean, you want to do it all over again, you really do, but you're also so relieved it's done because it's been like on your mind. It's been the center of your mind for months actually, and I did sell out, so that was a relief. But that only happened in the week leading up, so I had that constant ticket sales thing buzzing around my head too. So yeah, I woke up and I was just like, oh my God, I don't have to think about that anymore.
So you've delivered this amazing new music to us. But for the quick fire round, what I want to know is, what was the music of your youth? And do you still carry it with you?
Absolutely. Well, gosh, Kate Bush and I was listening to Elvis Costello the other day for the first time, but like he was a big part of my the Smiths. Yeah, I do. I still listen to lots of stuff, and I still keep it really broad. And that's been my approach to music making. It's like I just make music that I like, and I think that works. I think that's okay. Yeah.
Last song or podcast you listened to?
I listened to Constant Follower this morning because I'm learning the vocals. I'm singing with him tomorrow, so which is lovely because I love Constant Follower, and so I've had a nice day just sort of really spending proper time with those songs because you listen to things, but you don't necessarily always pick on all the lyrics and all the nuance. So yes, and really enjoyed listening to that this morning.
Exclusive album launch or festival?
Nowadays, probably exclusive album launch. I mean, I love festivals. I absolutely love festivals, and I love going to them and stuff. But yeah, no, I probably would go for that.
Favorite food or rider?
Food doesn't feature highly when I'm gigging. I get too nervous to think about food too much, and I sometimes have to remind myself to eat. And riders are quite boring these days because I don't really drink much. So as long as I've got some chamomile tea and a packet of vocal zones, I'm good to go.
If you could collaborate with anyone alive or from history on a project, who would it be and why?
I do fantasize sometimes about working with Joan Vassar from Joan is a Policewoman. I think she's a phenomenal artist, but she is also a producer. So I sort of, fantasize about maybe asking her one day to produce. Who knows?
Restaurant, cinema, or lazy Sunday brunch?
Lazy Sunday brunch.
Digital addict, can you switch off?
Oh, yeah. I like to say that I can switch off, but I find myself more and more with a just screen in my hand. And I tell myself it's because of work, but actually I could switch it off much more than I do.
What does life look like after you stop?
It's my kids, it's my animals, and it's nature. It's outdoors. I live in the countryside. I love being outdoors, beach, fields, woodlands, anything outdoorsy.
One artist everyone should be listening to right now?
Probably Jessica Pratt, I would say. I loved her. I can't remember the title of her first album, but her current album's just out and it's amazing, absolutely amazing. So yeah, Jessica Pratt.
From where you started until now, what was the good stuff in between?
I mean, nothing beat the lovely family journey that I've had. I'm very fortunate to have an amazing family. Yeah, like I've just been really lucky. I've worked with so many amazing people. I'm inspired by all the different people that I've, been in contact with through music, through all the different paths that music's taken. And a lot of the time it's been the most inspiring stuff has just been sat around a kitchen table somewhere and, the violins, fiddles come out and the guitars come out and you just realize that a friend of yours that you've known for years is an insanely talented musician. I love those events. I love those kind of like just sitting around a campfire or sitting at a party and everyone just, chipping in with a song. I love those kind of things.
What's the best piece of advice or helping hand you've been given or would share with others?
Don't ask, don't get thing. It really, we're quite apologetic musicians about what we do. It's like, because it doesn't make lots of money and it's not valued as highly as it should be, societally speaking, So I think we're always a little bit apologetic and a little bit like, oh, they won't want to know about that or they won't want to. And actually, it's not true. People do want to help. They do want to get involved. They do want to, the amount of help I had at my launch and everyone had a great time and they all thanked me, they thanked me and it's like, wow. So I think that would probably be it. Don't ask, don't get, just ask.
Xan Tyler, thanks so much for speaking to us today and very best of luck with the new album.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
The good stuff's
Thank you once again to Xan Tyler for giving me the time to chat about her remarkable new album, Holding Up Half the Sky. It's out this Friday. Please do go listen. This was episode 11 of The Good Stuff In Between. It was written, edited and produced by myself, Shaun Milne at Skog Media Associates. You can find us on Instagram at Good Stuff In Between or on Substack at goodstuffinbetween.substack.com. There you can sign up for our newsletter, Music Monday, comes out every week, and Made in Norway, for those who are interested in the Nordic music scene. If you've got some music or bands or artists you want to promote, drop us a line at goodstuffstudio@pm.me. In the meantime, we'll leave you with Willie Campbell on our title track, playing us out for another week. Thanks very much, and look out for an episode soon, wherever you get